We just finished day 2 of Anime Expo. We saw the Demon Slayer panel today.
First row.
First row. It was absolutely amazing.
So much fun.
Lots of tears. Thankfully none of our makeup was ruined too bad. But tomorrow's the real test. I'm already crying over Rui like every second.
Yeah, your makeup's not making it.
I'm terrified. But day 2 was amazing. Hello there, my fandom friends. My name is Jenna, and today I will be talking about my experience at Anime Expo from day 2. So that was Sunday, July 2nd. I'm making 4 videos like this where I talk about each of the days. If you're interested, I've already posted day 1. I'll be working on talking about day 3 and 4 after I film this video and edit it and get it out there. I'm also working on another video, kind of like an AMV type video where I show all of me and my friends' special moments from the weekend. It'll be like a 3-ish minute kind of vlog type video of everything. So I'm excited about that. That'll probably come out after I post this one. Stick around if you're interested in hearing about day 2. This day was super special because my friends and I made it to the Demon Slayer panel, which had a bunch of huge guests I will get to later in the video. So this day, my friends and I woke up super early, like I think it was like 5 a.m. because we were gonna be cosplaying all the Upper Moon demons. I was Akaza, half human, half demon. My friends were Kokushibo, Fem Muzan, Daki, Gyutaro. We had most of the upper moons, which was really fun. We woke up super early because we wanted to get there as soon as possible for the Demon Slayer panel, which was at 4 p.m., but we wanted to get there as soon as possible because of the voice actors, the Japanese voice actors who were going to be present during that panel. We knew it was going to be super popular. So we got there around like 7:30 to get in line. They didn't open until 9, but we wanted to be one of the first in lines that we could get in. Right as we got in, the security and everything was super easy and fast to get through. We booked it to that convention room. It was the same room that the Spy Family Iguchi-san panel was in the day before, and so we knew where it was. We got in line. There was a huge line already, but we got in and we had to sit through I think 4 different panels before the Demon Slayer panel. And so it started off with a Twisted Wonderland panel, and then it went into a Wit Studio panel, an Undead, Unluck panel, Jujutsu Kaisen panel, and then finally Demon Slayer. So my friends and I waited about 7 hours in this room. And you might be wondering why we were doing that. Because we were cosplaying the Upper Moons. We wanted to get the front row seat to that Demon Slayer panel. First up was the Twisted Wonderland panel, which was actually really cool. So I had never heard of Twisted Wonderland until this panel. It's a computer game, and so they had 3 of the voice actors on the stage for this panel. And they had Hanae-san, who is the voice of Riddle in this game, and of course we were excited to see Hanae-san because he's the Japanese voice of Tanjiro. They had another voice actor, Kabayashi-san, who plays Spade in the game, and then they had a guest one on. I can't remember this person's name, but they play the character Ace, I believe. We made it into the room. I think we were in like the 5th row, but it was like off to the far side of the stage. And so they weren't like total, they were good, they were very good seats, but not what we wanted for the Demon Slayer panel. And so our plan was to keep moving up and up as the panels went on during the day so that we'd hopefully get front row seats for the Demon Slayer panel. And so we sat through the Twisted Wonderland panel. It was really, really cool and interesting. It actually got all of my friends hooked on wanting to play the game. Basically during this panel, they just answered some questions about the game. They did like a fun trivia game where they had like characters on like sticks, I think, or it could have just been paper, I don't remember, but it was like the character faces of these 3 characters, and they had to like answer questions about them. And it was kind of like a competition between the 3 voice actors, but the audience was very helpful and they all got 100% by the end of the panel, which was super cute. But yeah, that was basically the Twisted Wonderland panel. I don't completely remember like details of that one just because I hadn't played the game prior to watching the panel, so nothing really stuck to me other than the fact that it sounded like a really fun and cool game to play. And of course the voice actors for it were just super fun to watch the whole time. Right after that panel was the Wit Studio panel, and my friends and I were able to move up a bit more. We like moved over to the next section of the room, And then I think we were like in the third row, but it was still kind of off to the side. So we were like, okay, we're a little closer, but not to the front row yet. Seeing the Wit Studio panel was really cool. They had a couple people on the stage talking about everything, all of the new shows that are coming out soon. They played a lot of trailers for like new seasons of shows coming out soon, which was really cool to watch. Even if I wasn't familiar with the shows, it was still cool seeing like, oh, here's like a little sneak peek of what's to come. My favorite was seeing the new Spy Family trailer. That was just awesome. More Spy Family from like the high of the previous day, of course, seeing Iguchi-san. The host was just super fun and funny. She was just super bright and trying to get the audience involved as much as possible. Basically, like whenever like an audience member would have like some kind of like drastic reaction to something, like someone would scream and she'd be like, oh, that person wants a prize? And she would like just start handing out prizes to basically like the louder people in the audience who were getting more involved in what, you know, they were talking about. But it was so funny and it was honestly just like such a good experience. Anyway, so the next panel was the Undead Unluck panel. We actually had to stay in our seats for this one. No seats in front of us opened up, and that's when we started to get worried because, of course, like I've said previously, we wanted that front row seat for the Demon Slayer panel. I'm actually just now remembering one of my friends didn't sit with us during this panel actually because she got, I think it was like the third row, but it was like right in front of the stage, but it was only a single seat. And so she went over there to just kind of like claim that area. It was just wild trying to chair hop through all these panels. It was just so stressful, but like looking back on it, just so funny. So this panel was really cool because it was kind of like introducing a new anime that's coming out soon called Undead Unluck. And so they started off the panel by showing a trailer of the show, of the story. This panel had Hanae-san again as one of the voice actors since he plays one of the characters in the show. Before the panel, they were actually passing out these like fans, and his character was on the one that my friends and I got, which was cool. We're like, oh, look, it's Hanae-san's character. And then they had, I think there were 2 other voice actors from the show on the stage. And so just the whole time we got to, again, just watch them talk about their experience through this story and this show. After they were kind of done talking about the show and the story, they had trivia for the audience with questions on like the big screens on either side of the room, either side of the stage, basically. It was kind of like, oh, like, were you paying attention enough to want these prizes? And so they had a bunch of prizes. They were asking questions. And my friends and I were all, you know, even if we're not super familiar with the story, we were still trying to participate because it was really fun. They were handing out really cool prizes, all different kinds, and I think it was one of the last questions they asked. My friend who was sitting next to me, Gabriel, he was cosplaying Gyutaro. He actually won a prize, and it was so cool. He won a t-shirt for answering the question right. And it was just so fun watching him like walk up to the stage, and like he was right next to me when he answered the question. And so it was cool because like Hanae-san and like all the voice actors up there were like looking at us. Like they saw my friend. Hanae-san actually watched my friend Gabriel walk up to kind of like toward the front of the stage to get his prize. And it was just so fun. I'm so happy for him. Another crazy moment during this panel was that they were about to finish and then they were like, oh wait, one more thing, Hanae-san has a gift for someone in the audience. And he was like, what? I do? What ended up being the prize was a jacket, and it happened to be his jacket. And so they had one last question for this very, very special prize. And so obviously all the audience is going absolutely insane. My friend Hannah is a huge fan of Hanae-san. She was trying to get the stage people's attention. My friends and I were like pointing at her. We're like, look over there, she needs this prize. Like, come on, please. We were all like begging. I stood on my chair as Akaza. I saw other people standing on their chairs, so I was like, I'm getting up there because I want my friend to get this jacket. Like, if I got something of Uchiyama-san's, I don't know what I would do. I probably would have fainted on the spot. So I was like standing on my chair, like pointing at her. I was like, over there, like look over there. They didn't look at us at all. They just pick someone else, and that was it. Even though she did not get the jacket, at least my friend Gabriel got a shirt as a prize, which was super cool. Something else that they were doing for this panel and for this anime that was super special for Anime Expo was that they were doing an audition for a dub voice actor for the show. And so on the last day of the convention, they actually held in the same room an audition for anyone who wanted to be a part of this show. I wasn't there for that. One of my friends attended, and basically the way it worked was that they had like a name picking system with all the potential participants, and then I think they picked 100 people. They all went on the stage and then acted out something to audition for the show, and then they picked a person. So it's really cool. Like, one of the people who went to Anime Expo like auditioned to be in this show as the dub voice, and they got it. Like, that is so special. What a gift to go to the convention and literally become the voice of a character. Like, that's wild to me. Like, congratulations to that person out there. I'm happy and I'm rooting for you. After that panel was the Jujutsu Kaisen panel, and this was the panel right before the Demon Slayer panel. So this was like basically our last chance to get front row seats that we had been hoping for like the past 6 hours. At that point, right before the panel, my friend Hannah was actually able to move up. She joined 3 of her other friends, and she had a front row seat secured. One of my other friends, she was cosplaying Daki, my friend Felicia, she also got a seat in the front row, just not next to Hannah, so they were a little separated. And then I took the seat that was in like the 3rd row that Hannah had been sitting in previously, and then my other 2 friends were still on like the side in like the other row. So we were all like split up. But we were like trying to get as close to the front as we could. And so we're still trying, and the Jujutsu Kaisen panel is starting. They had a bunch of people. At that point, I had never seen Jujutsu Kaisen, so I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know who the people were on the stage. I was just so happy to be there and like see everyone else's reactions, because it was a huge hit. Like, the crowd was going insane, but it was still really fun nonetheless, even though I didn't know what was going on. They showed like the first, I think it was 90 seconds of the first episode of the new season. The first episode is out by now, but when we saw it, it was like the very first time they were showing it. They hadn't even played it in Japan yet, so it was like a huge deal. It was super special. And I kind of felt like I was so out of place, because like the people next to me and like all around me were like absolutely screaming their heads off. And I was just sitting there like, then it was time for the panel to end, and that's when like chaos was, it was chaos. It was absolute chaos. My friends and I were trying our best to save all of our like random seats while we're still trying to get like a row of 5 in the front row. And so what ended up happening is I asked my friend Gabriel to sit where I was sitting, which was like 3 rows behind, or it was the 3rd row. And just to save it for a sec, while I tried to go like negotiate with the people in the front row, because there was very kind people, a very kind group of people who were actually there since the Twisted Wonderland panel. So same as us, they just happened to get the front row. And they saw how passionate we all were. They saw that we were cosplaying all the upper moons, and they gave up their seats for us so that we could all sit together in that front row. And at that point, we only had 4 in a row, so my friend Gabriel was still sitting in the back, and so we were trying to figure out like how to get him up front. And I was talking to this couple, and the woman was like, oh, well, like, my boyfriend can move so that your friend can sit up here. And she literally gave up her boyfriend's spot so that my friend Gabriel could move up and sit with us. And we were like, oh my gosh, like, if you're watching that, any of those people in the front row that moved for us at the last second, like, thank you so much. Like, you don't understand how much that meant to us. We are insane, passionate fans of Demon Slayer, and so that meant the absolute world to us. Thank you so much. Arigatou gozaimashita. It was at this point I took a video of our front row. I actually took this video before Gabriel was able to move up, so he's unfortunately not in it, but I'll play it here just so you can see our excitement before the panel.
We somehow scored front row seats to the Demon Slayer panel! We got all the upper moons here! We're so excited! the coolest thing ever. Oh my god.
The reason why we were so excited for this panel, not only because it was Demon Slayer, they were going to be talking specifically about the Swordsmith Village arc, but because they had 3 special guests all the way from Japan. They had Hanae-san, which is the voice of Tanjiro. They had Kawanishi-san, which is the voice of Muichiro. And they had Takahashi-san, which is the producer of Demon Slayer. As I mentioned in the previous video, all of the panels at this convention, we were not allowed to take pictures or videos, so unfortunately I cannot share any of that content. So I'm going to do my best and show pictures along with what I'm talking about, especially before and after the panel as I've done so far. And hopefully that's entertaining, as well as just my passion that I know will shine through a lot in this video. If you saw my video from a couple months ago, my friends and I went to the Demon Slayer world premiere in LA back in February, and we actually saw Takahashi-san and Hanae-san, so we had already seen them. So the main highlight for me in this panel was the voice of Muichiro, Kawanishi-san. I was going wild. I was already crying before the panel started. My friend who was cosplaying Daki, I remember she like passed me tissues at one point, I think when he was walking on stage, which I'll get to in a second. If you don't know, Muichiro is one of my favorite characters in Demon Slayer. He's my favorite Hashira. I cosplay him. I actually cosplayed him on the 4th day of Anime Expo, which I'll make a separate video for. It is starting, and they of course had to open up the panel with the theme song for season 3, the Swordsmith Village arc. And so we are absolutely jamming to this song. Everyone in the front row is just going so hard. My friends and I were going absolutely wild. And there's something special about like sitting in the front row that makes you kind of believe that you're like the only ones in the room. And so like I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like the stage is like right here in front of me, like we're so close, and you just kind of like block out everything behind you, but like you could still hear just like the massive crowd of like 3,000-ish people going absolutely wild. The theme song ends and the crowd is still going absolutely insane, and the 3 of them walk on the stage, they're introduced, and the voice of Tanjiro and Muichiro both came out with one of their lines from the story. And oh my gosh, the crowd was going so wild that like we missed part of what they were even saying because everyone was so pumped. They were on stage, they were answering some questions about the Swordsmith Village arc, and something very notable, if you watch my premiere video, maybe you remember if I talked about this, I don't even know, I probably didn't honestly, but Hanae-san actually at the world premiere back in February was talking a little bit in English, but it was mostly Japanese. And at this panel, and throughout all the panels this whole day that I've been talking about that he was a part of, he actually was speaking quite a bit of English. Seeing the evolution and this time span that he has went through and has had so much growth in just like 5 months, like he was speaking like sentences in English. Like there were times when like he would just be going and going and I'd be like, oh, when is he gonna stop? Like he's not even speaking Japanese at this point. He doesn't need the translator. He's just going full English and it makes sense and he's doing so good. And like at one point he was like, can I speak Japanese now? He was so sweet. He is such a pure sweet soul, just like our boy Tanjiro is. They went back and forth answering some questions about the Swordsmith Village arc in particular. Kawanishi-san, one of my favorite parts from him was when he was talking about the comparison of playing the Tokito twins. And so he was talking about how for Yurichiro, he had to really dig deep and find like that anger and those like really deep emotions that like Muichiro doesn't really express, of course, until we get to the fight with Kyoko. He was talking about how that was in particular harder for him because that's not really how he is as a person. He's more like Muichiro. Hearing him talk about how he played both characters was really cool. When I watched that episode when we see Muichiro's backstory with his twin brother, you realize like, oh my gosh, like Kawanishi-san is not only playing Muichiro, he's also playing Yurichiro. And it's just so special that he can go back and forth and make it sound so convincing and so real because of how talented he is. And so that was really, really special for me to hear him talk about that. Hanae-san, of course, had a lot of really cool things to say as well. He was talking about how, like, for example, the episodes that he's not in Demon Slayer, so like the episode we got this season, or like the first episode of the Mugen Train arc, how he gets to actually like sit back, and what he said is that he gets to be a fan of the story, just like the rest of us, the audience of the books and the show. And I just found that to be just so incredibly sweet and powerful that like he has that opportunity to then step back and like be a fan himself. Because if you don't know, Hanae-san is a huge nerd for this story. He is the biggest fan and he's so sweet about it. He loves playing Tanjiro and he puts his absolute all into every single part that his character is in. He's read the manga so many times. He was even talking about how like he read that finale scene of the Swordsmith Village arc from the manga like so many times to help him prepare for exactly how he was gonna do it. He didn't want to miss a single detail. He's so dedicated to this story and to this character and to his fans. He's really a brilliant person. Something else, I think I mentioned this actually in my previous video, but something that a lot of the panelists were talking about is how appreciative they are of the audience. They're so just respectful toward us and so thankful and grateful for the people who are showing up to these panels, the cosplayers who are supporting these characters. That was something that all of them were talking about. Kawanishi-san, Takahashi-san, and Hanae-san was just like a huge thank you to the audience. They not only used the big screens in the panel room to show off the theme song, they also showed 3 different scenes from the Swordsmith Village arc. They started by showing, I think it was from episode 5, Tanjiro's special moment when he's fighting the emotions of Hentengu, when he is doing the Sun Halo Dragon dance, and oh my gosh, that scene is just absolutely incredible. They also showed the scene of Gyoko versus Muichiro for, of course, Kawanishi-san. Just seeing Muichiro's mist go all out on these screens and like the beautiful sounds it makes and the music, and Gyoko like freaking out because he can't see Muichiro through his ability. And then, of course, the third scene that they played was Tanjiro fighting Hentengu in the finale of the season, which they cut it off at a really good spot, Hentengu's defeat. The panel also used these big screens to show off 2 very special videos from 2 other voice actors who were not present at the convention. They were still in Japan, but they wanted to be a part of the convention, and so what they did was they got a video of the voice of Mitsuri and Nezuko. So the voice of Mitsuri being Hanazawa-san and the voice of Nezuko being Kito-san, if I'm saying their names correctly. They started with Kito-san, the voice of Nezuko, and she just popped up on the screen and she was so sweet. She was talking about how she wanted to come. She was asking the audience questions and hoping that we were all having a really good time. She was talking about how when she started Demon Slayer, she was really nervous. And now, like, just seeing how far she's come up into this very special episode, of course, that we have for Nezuko in the finale, but of course throughout the whole season, because Nezuko absolutely kicks butt in this season. She has her moments to shine for sure, but it was really sweet seeing Kito-san talk to the audience, and she really seemed like she wanted to come, so we're hoping for next year she can be a part of it as well. And then, of course, we had the voice of Mitsuri, Hanazawa-san. She was the absolute sweetest. And she was also talking about how she really wanted to come to Anime Expo. So, of course, there's hope for her maybe next year in the future. She was asking the audience questions as well. She was hoping that there were some Mitsuri cosplayers in the audience, so that was super sweet of her. We were not expecting to see these very special videos from these two voice actresses all the way from Japan. That was just definitely a very wonderful surprise for the audience, on top of like everything else they were giving us. Like, they spoiled us so much during that panel. Going back to Hanae-san and Kawanishi-san, they were talking a bit about just kind of their lives back in Japan, back at home, and Hanae-san in particular was talking about how he really loves coming back to America. I think this was his third time in America, and he actually got to do some sightseeing this time. Actually, the day before Anime Expo, he was talking about how he went to Disneyland. And so, like, that is just the coolest. That's the absolute coolest. Like, he got to experience, like, America's Disneyland. And, like, of course, that's such an iconic theme park for America, and he got to experience that. And he was talking about how he went on the Alice in Wonderland ride, and after Kito and Hanazawa-san had their special moments on the screen, Hanae-san and Kawanishi-san and Takahashi-san were like, oh, like, what could we bring back for them? And they were asking the audience what they thought, and everyone was like shouting out their answers, and from what it sounded like, the only thing they heard was that they should bring back In and Out for them, which is actually really funny because at the Demon Slayer world premiere that I went to like 5 months ago with my friends, In and Out was a topic that got brought up actually at the premiere. Basically what happened back then is the dub voice of Tanjiro, Zach Aguilar, he was there, and as well as Hanae-san, and they went out to In and Out together and like took pictures and stuff. And so for them to hear that again from the audience was just really funny, because it was a callback to like probably the Demon Slayer world premiere that we had also been at. Also, just side note, like whenever they were playing something on the screen, like our front row in particular, like all my friends and I, all of us upper moons were going absolutely wild. And like the people on the stage were like at an angle where they couldn't really view the screens on either side of the stage, and so they were just looking at the audience the whole time. And like my friends and I were thinking back and we were like, gosh, they were like staring at us going absolutely wild, like screaming our heads off. That was not all from the panel. They had one more very, very special gift for us. They had a very special gift for the whole audience. They started off by showing a video on all the screens of one of the Demon Slayer artists drawing a picture of Tanjiro and Muichiro. And it was a very elaborate video of like basically all the steps that go into creating these characters for the scenes of this anime. And so we watched them draw it by hand, and then it eventually went digital. They're coloring it in, and it's a picture of Tanjiro and Muichiro. And something else that was cool was that it was the first time the Japanese voice actors were getting to see the video as well. So at that point they had like turned around in their chairs and were looking at the big screen behind them. But once it was over, they announced to the audience that they had a copy of the picture for every single person in that room. And this is what they gave us: the picture of Tanjiro and Muichiro from the Swordsmith Village arc. They handed this out to every person in that panel room. An amazing, amazing gift that we'll all cherish. And I just remember like they gave like each row a stack of these and were telling us, please just take one and pass it along, like we only have enough for this room, which I think had about 3,000 people. Just a huge shout out to Ufotable and everyone else who was involved in creating this, and of course giving this to every single person in that room. I am going to treasure this forever. It means so very much to me and my friends, so arigatou gozaimashita. Moving on from the picture, the lovely gift they gave us, they decided to do a couple lines from the story. So Kawanishi-san and Hanae-san both came forward to the front of the stage and they did some lines from the show, starting with Kawanishi-san. He had some lines from Muichiro. I was crying. I was crying so much when he walked on the stage, whenever he would talk. Something I've neglected to say this whole time is that he sounds exactly like Gyutaro, like more so than like Hanae-san sounds like Tanjiro. And so whenever Kawanishi-san would speak, like you can just hear Gyutaro, and so like that just like sets my brain off, and I'm like picturing, of course, his character in my head. He had some lines and then it transferred over to Hanae-san. He had some lines as Tanjiro, both very, very special moments. Again, I'm just so very thankful we got to experience that, and of course it was Kawanishi-san's very first time to America, so that was also very, very fun. They got a big group picture of everyone, the 3 Japanese voice actors on the stage, well, voice actors and then producer. You can see us all in the front row, my friends and I, and something funny that we noticed like after this picture was posted is that like literally everyone in the audience is holding up their little picture that they had gifted us, except for us upper moons. Like we had already put them away. We're like we're making sure these make it home safe, like tucked it away safely in our bags, and then we take this picture and like we're the only ones not holding it up. Like how very upper moon of us. Something else was that they showed the Hashira training arc trailer. Of course, this has already been out for a couple months now, but it was really neat seeing all the Hashira flash on the screen. My friends and I were going absolutely wild. That was basically the end of the panel. We had such an amazing time. This was definitely one of my favorite panels from the weekend. Something else I wanted to mention here is that all of my friends and I who attended Anime Expo and this panel, of course, we were on a Demon Slayer podcast called the Hashira Half Hour. My friend Hannah, the one I've been talking about in these videos, she is one of the hosts of this podcast, as well as someone else named Brian and another person named Emily. And together, these 3 people make up the Hashira Half Hour podcast. And so they invited all of us on to talk about just this wonderful experience that the Demon Slayer panel was at Anime Expo. So if you want more details from all of my friends individually, I highly encourage you to check it out. Honestly, like I don't even remember getting up and walking out of that room because I think we were just all in a daze of like, oh my gosh, like we did it. We waited 7 hours. And our time and commitment and dedication to this story paid off.
All right, y'all, how are we doing? How was today?
Doing good. Today I almost cried several times.
Today I did cry several times.
It was great. My feet hurt.
It was so great. I want a t-shirt.
Woo!
We went to the entertainment hall, I think is what it was called, because they had like a bunch of like stand-up like figurines and blow-ups and statues and things. And so we went straight to the Demon Slayer section. It was so cool. They had like this whole setup of Daki's like her belt like wrapping around, and then at like the right side of it was a sword, and they had like all of these like exclusive things that you could buy. There was a bunch of stuff on the walls, posters of all the characters, and it was very heavily themed for the entertainment district. We went back to that like cute Japanese style food market thing I was talking about in my previous video. We got pictures with that red arch again. There's this picture of all of us together, and we just look so good and so cool. Like this is one of my favorite pictures from the convention, just because like it's all my friends together and I just love them so much. After we did that, we started making our way to like this tree that we had been getting pictures at because it was really pretty. On our way to that tree, there was like this big section in front of like a big parking garage that had like a bunch of like shrubbery and like plants and everything. And all days of the convention, there was a lot of photo shoots going there just because it was like one of the more like lush green areas at the convention. And so we were passing that, and I turned to my right and I saw a cosplayer with a Dunkin' Donuts like apron and hat, and they were carrying that in a donut box, and they were cosplaying a donut. And keep in mind, I am cosplaying Akaza this day. I went insane. I like pointed, I was like, there's a donut cosplayer, we have to go over there. And I'm like absolutely losing my mind because like that's so unique. Like, who cosplays a donut? Like, especially to like something as very specific as an anime convention. And so I like run over there and he sees me and he's like, oh my gosh, like perfect, like you're Akaza, you know? Everyone gets the joke. I know, I'm sorry.
I love that so much. Thank you. Jenna, wave at me. I'm having the time of my life.
They let me borrow the Dunkin' Donuts apron and the hat, so I put those on and got some like really fun videos and pictures together. And after that, I was just like, I was on such a high. I've been waiting to find a Dunkin' Donuts like apron and hat that just like someone has that I could borrow, and I got that. I was so happy, and like of course like it had to be that specific day that I was Akaza. Like I didn't see that guy any other days, so that was just literally perfect. Shout out again to you, you were incredible. So the next day was of course the day that I would be cosplaying Rui, and the voice of Rui, Japanese voice of Rui, Uchiyama-san, was gonna be there. And so I wanted to find the panel room that he was gonna be in, just so I could, you know, have my mind at ease more. I know exactly where that room is, so I'm not stressing about finding it the day of. That was the very last thing we did. We were trying to find the room. We realized it was not actually in the convention building. It was in the Marriott Hotel, which was across the street. And so we made our way over there, we make it into the Marriott, and we went upstairs because that's where the room was, where Uchiyama-san would be. I knew it was on the 3rd floor. We're making our way up, and I'm feeling super emotional because I can't stop thinking that the next day I will be seeing Uchiyama-san, and I'm gonna cry. I was scared right off the bat because it was like a long hallway with like a huge room, and like the hallway was just like lined in like these zigzag like tape on the ground, as if like, you know, people would stand there to be in line for like something huge. And I was like, okay, like it's gonna be this room. I walked into the room and just kind of took everything in, thinking to myself, like, this is where I'm gonna see Uchiyama-san tomorrow. I think it was at that point I was for sure getting teary-eyed, and we make our way back down. I ran into a Rengoku cosplayer, so I got pictures with them really quick. We just took a quick bathroom break, and as I was waiting for my friends, I was sitting down on a couch and I just like started crying because I was just thinking like, I'm gonna see Uchiyama-san in this building like tomorrow. That was basically day 2. We got back super late that night, and then like the next morning I woke up at like 4 a.m. to do my Rui makeup, which will be the next episode. No more crying for this episode, but the next one I film, I will probably be like sobbing the whole time. So look forward to that, I guess. But I hope you enjoyed me talking about day 2, and stay tuned for day 3 and day 4. Day 3 was very special for me as well. Obviously, I will be talking about Rui and Uchiyama-san, that whole experience. So please stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Oh! Same one that the Why am I thinking about Uchiyama-san right now? Guess what? Uchiyama-san is in it, and I'm gonna cosplay his character because he's awesome and he's hot. Cut that out. Cut that out. Like Haganazuka? No.